Leeds International School, Form 2, First Midterm, English Language, Grammar to 14, page 88. Commas to mark clauses. Objectives of the lesson. Learning to use commas for compound sentences. Second one. Learning to use commas for complex sentences. Learning to use commas when there are more subordinate clauses. Learning to use commas for non-defining clauses. Here the content. Commas for compound sentences. Commas for complex sentences. Commas for more subordinate clauses within one sentence. Commas for defining and non-defining clauses. Starting point, going further, finally, further still. Okay children, let's see the lesson. Commas to mark clauses. In a compound sentence, comma is frequently necessary to punctuate the two halves of the sentences, especially with the conjunction but. You know, normally we use the conjunctions but, and, or for compound sentences. Also you have learned that one, fanboys. Right? First letters of the sentence fanboys tells what are the conjunctions for compound sentences. In another lesson I will teach that. Okay, here compound sentences, for them we use commas. Let's see. Australia won the match, comma, but it was very close. Here the two clauses are Australia won the match, but it was very close. Here, to separate the main clause from the other clause, we use a comma. Second one. African teams are packed with talent, comma, but can one of team win the cup? Here the main clause, African teams are packed with talent. The subordinate clause is but can one of team win the cup? Actually not the subordinate clause, other half of the sentence. But can one of team win the cup? To separate them we used a comma. Let's see now complex sentences. They have got subordinate clauses. In complex sentences, commas should be used to separate subordinate clauses, that mean helping clauses, from one another and from main clauses. Sometimes we separate subordinate clauses from main clauses, and when there are many subordinate clauses we use comma to separate them from each other. Look at this one. Because of the temperature had dropped to below freezing point, comma. Because of the temperature had dropped to below freezing point is a subordinate clause. Why? It is started with the conjunction. Look at this main clause. The pipes became frozen. That is the main clause because it is not started with the conjunction. Here after point we used a comma to separate the subordinate clause from the main clause. Here after frozen we use another comma. Here also we use comma to separate the main clause from a subordinate clause. What is the subordinate clause? Which means that a plumber had to be contacted. Here we learned how to use commas in complex sentences to separate them to separate main clauses from the subordinate clauses. Let's go to next one. Right. Earlier we use commas to separate main clauses from subordinate clauses, and also we separated subordinate clauses when they are a lot from each other by using commas. Okay. Adjectival clauses, defining and non-defining. What are they? Let's see. The group who were remaining behind were grateful for the rest. Here, children, who were remaining behind defines the group that is meant. It is one of a number of groups. The adjectival clause is a defining clause. Here, no need to use commas because adjectival clause is a defining clause. Let's go to second one. The group, comma, who were remaining behind, another comma, were grateful for the rest. Here we have used non-defining clause. Right? The second adjectival clause adds extra information about the whole group described. It does not pick out one group from among several. It is a non-defining clause. The commas clarify this fact. Since we have used commas, it is non-defining clause. When we are not using commas for adjectival clauses, they become defining clauses. Okay, let's go to next one. Yes, we have got starting point. What should you do here? Insert commas in the following headlines where you think they are necessary. Here, first one. Yes, there is a main clause and other part of that sentence. This is a compound sentence. Nigeria struggle, but they win. Here we have used to separate one clause from another clause. We have used here a comma. This is the example. I also have taken this from your book. Then like that you have got B, C, D newspaper headings. Right. Let's go to going further. Insert commas in the following sentences where you think they are necessary. Here not a compound. Here there is a complex sentence. Here we should use commas to separate the main clause from the subordinate clauses and subordinate clause themselves each other. Okay. Because I had forgotten to bring a pen, that is subordinate clause, then we use a comma. The teacher lent me one. That is the main clause. The teacher lent me one because it is started with the subject. First one, because I had forgotten to bring a pen, that is a subordinate clause because it is started with the conjunction because. Okay. After that, teacher lent me one, comma, which I then forgot to return. Right. There is a relative clause. To separate that from the main clause, we have used a comma. After that relative clause, there is another subordinate clause. Although she had reminded me to do so. After the word pen, we used a comma to separate the subordinate clause from the main clause. The teacher lent me one. Okay. After one, we have used a comma to separate the main clause from the subordinate clause, which I then forgot to return. Okay. Then after return, we have used a comma to separate two subordinate clauses. There is no main clause. Okay, that is going further. Like that you can do B, C, D and E. Okay, let's go to further step. Read the following report. Numerous commas have been omitted. Rewrite the passage inserting that missing commas where appropriate. I have taken as the example first sentence. Look at this. Only those students who studied French were allowed on the trip. Although many, I didn't take other piece, right? I stopped there. Only those students who studied French were allowed on the trip, main clause. Although many, subordinate clause. Here we have used a comma after the word trip to separate the main clause from the subordinate clause. Like that you can do other half of the passage. Summary. Here we have learned these things. Compound sentences need commas to punctuate the sentence. Complex sentences need commas to punctuate the sentence. Non-defining adjectival clauses need commas to punctuate the sentence. Okay, children? Reference: Oxford Grammar to 14 by Don Shiach. That is the end of the lesson. Thank you very much for listening to me.